You're not half the woman my mother is." The words from my daughter-in-law, Samantha, cut through the dining room of my old townhouse in Boston as I set down the chocolate pudding I had made with all my heart. A suffocating silence spread across the table. My chest tightened, my pulse raced. Without thinking, I pushed my chair back and said, "Then maybe your mother can start paying the $2,200 mortgage for your Riverside apartment." My son Daniel went pale. "Mortgage? What mortgage?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. That was the night everything in my life shifted forever. And it was only the beginning of a story no one could have predicted. My name is Margaret, and I'm 70 years old. That night in my Boston townhouse, I discovered something that shattered my heart. A mother's unconditional love can easily become her greatest weakness. For nearly 8 months, I had been secretly paying the $2,200 monthly mortgage on the Riverside apartment where my son Daniel and his wife Samantha lived. I told myself it was my duty, that it was only temporary, that helping my son through a rough patch was what any good mother would do. What I never imagined was that, while I was scraping together every dollar from my modest retirement checks, they were looking down on me, seeing me as nothing more than an old woman to mock, rather than the reason they even had a roof over their heads. It had all started the previous fall. Daniel had shown up at my door one cold evening, his eyes red and swollen, his hands trembling as he clutched a half-empty coffee cup. "Mom, I lost my job," he whispered. "We can't make the mortgage this month. Just until I get back on my feet, please." He'd always had that broken voice that melted me, no matter how old he got. And like any mother, I didn't hesitate. I pulled from my savings, the money I had tucked away by hemming skirts, altering suits, and sewing dresses for decades. I told myself it was for Daniel, the boy I had raised alone after his father died, the boy I once called my miracle child. "This will be our little secret," Daniel had said. "I don't want Samantha to feel ashamed, Mom. She's proud, and I don't want her to think less of me." Naive as I was, I believed him. I thought he was protecting her pride. I didn't realize he was protecting his own fragile image as a provider. And while I counted every penny, skipping doctor's appointments and stretching meals of rice and eggs to make ends meet, they carried on as if nothing had changed. New clothes appeared in Samantha's closet. Their social media feeds showed dinners at trendy restaurants downtown, weekend getaways to Cape Cod, tickets to concerts, champagne toasts. I saw it all, though I never said a word. That evening, I had tried to create something special. I spent the entire day in my small kitchen, slow roasting chicken with rosemary and garlic, preparing mashed potatoes the way Daniel liked, and making his favorite dessert, chocolate pudding, the one he used to beg for as a child, the one that always made him smile. The table was set with my mother's crystal glasses, polished until they sparkled under the chandelier, and the silver cutlery I only brought out on holidays. I wanted it to feel warm, festive, like family. But from the moment they walked in, I felt the chill. Samantha arrived in a sleek emerald green dress, dripping with gold jewelry, her heels clicking against the wooden floor like warning signals. She forced a smile, the kind I knew all too well, the smile she used when she was about to strike. Daniel avoided my eyes, his phone never leaving his hand, fidgeting like a nervous schoolboy about to confess. Dinner conversation was strained, every word a small dagger. Samantha criticized the food's temperature, the way the curtains hung in my dining room, even the scent of the candle I had lit. "Margaret, don't you think it's time you freshened this place up?" she said in that patronizing tone. "My mother's house feels so modern, clean, minimalist, elegant. You'd love it." I forced a smile, tried to keep the peace, but inside I was boiling. This house had been mine for more than 30 years. Every picture frame on the wall carried a memory. Every scratch on the wooden table told a story. By the time I carried in the dessert, I was exhausted, but hopeful. I thought perhaps the pudding would soften the evening, bring back a flicker of warmth between us. But instead of gratitude, I got Samantha's cruelest words yet. Those words that pierced me like a knife. "You're not half the woman my mother is." I froze, spoon in midair, my throat tightening. Daniel stared at his plate. Samantha leaned back with a smug smile, as if she had been waiting all night for the chance to humiliate me. "Excuse me?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling though I knew I had heard her words perfectly. Samantha leaned back in her chair with that false elegance of hers, crossing one leg over the other as if she were the queen of my dining room. She smiled a thin, victorious smile and repeated, this time slower, crueler. "You heard me, Margaret. My mother is a successful, independent woman. She built her own real estate company from the ground up. She has a summer home in Martha's Vineyard, a condo in Miami, and she travels to Europe twice a year. She's never needed anyone. She doesn't waste her life cooking or sewing. She creates. You just manage to put food on the table. That's it." Each word hammered at my chest. I felt my stomach knotting, my breath catching. For a moment, I thought I might drop right there, in front of them both. Images flashed in my mind like cruel snapshots. The long nights hunched over a sewing machine when Daniel was just a baby, my fingers raw and bleeding from pushing needles through thick fabric. The times I pawned my few pieces of jewelry so I could pay his college tuition. The nights I sat beside his bed when he had a fever, whispering prayers into the darkness while I wiped his forehead with a damp cloth. The way I worked double shifts so he could have brand-name sneakers, so he wouldn't be mocked at school for being the kid with the cheap shoes. And now, after all of that, after decades of sacrifices I never once regretted, my son's wife, who slept each night under the roof I secretly paid for, was looking me in the eye and telling me I wasn't even half the woman her mother was. Daniel shifted uneasily in his chair. "Samantha, please," he muttered, his voice weak, like a child scolded at school. Those 2 words, just 2 pathetic syllables, were worse than silence. They confirmed what I had already felt. He agreed with her. He knew this was coming. He had let it happen. My son, the same boy who once clung to me and whispered, "Mom, you're my hero," now let his wife humiliate me without lifting a finger. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but the bitterness burned. "Samantha," I said, my voice breaking. "Do you even realize?" But she cut me off, raising her voice a little higher, as if she wanted to make sure every cruel word would echo through the walls of my home. My mother would never have let her son live like this. Look at this place. She waved her manicured hand toward my dining room, my sanctuary. The wooden table, scuffed from years of family meals, the floral curtains faded from sunlight, the mismatched chairs I'd held onto because each one carried a memory. This is mediocrity. This is small. My mother would have given us something better. She wouldn't have kept us in poverty while pretending to be generous. Her words hit me like a whip. Poverty, mediocrity. She spoke as if everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made, was worthless. My grip tightened on the spoon still in my hand. The chocolate pudding trembled, threatening to spill. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, a storm rising inside me that I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just the insult. It was the hypocrisy, the sheer audacity of someone who, for months, had been living off my quiet generosity while buying designer handbags, while posting pictures of weekend spa trips, while mocking the very woman who made all of that possible. I stared at Daniel, waiting for him to defend me, to push back, to say enough. But he kept his head bowed, fiddling with his phone like a coward. Something inside me cracked then, not softly, but violently, like a dam bursting. I set the spoon down carefully, deliberately, so it wouldn't clatter and betray the shaking in my hands. I stood slowly, my chair scraping across the hardwood floor. My knees wobbled, but my voice, when it came, was steady in a way that surprised even me. "All right, Samantha," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "If your mother is so superior, if she's such a better woman than me, then perhaps it's time she takes on the responsibilities of a successful woman." Samantha smirked, clearly believing she had won. "Exactly, Margaret. I'm glad you finally understand your place in this family." My lips curved into something that wasn't a smile. "Oh, I understand my place perfectly." I paused, letting the words hang heavy. "And my place no longer includes paying the $2,200 mortgage for your riverside apartment." The silence that followed was so thick it felt alive. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide, his face drained of blood. What mortgage? He shouted, standing so quickly his chair nearly toppled. His voice cracked, loud enough to rattle the chandelier. Samantha froze. The smug grin vanished, replaced by something I had never seen on her face before: raw, unguarded fear. For the first time that night, I felt the shift. The balance of power in that dining room was no longer hers. The mortgage I've been paying every single month since last September, I said, each word deliberate, heavy as stone. My voice didn't shake this time. Instead, it rang out clear, slicing through the suffocating silence of the dining room. Daniel blinked, as if he hadn't heard me right. You, what? His voice cracked, half yell, half plea. I looked at him steadily. $2,200. On the 5th of every month. Out of my checking account. 8 months straight. Money I should have used for my medication, for groceries, for my own roof repairs. But I gave it to you, so you could keep living in your Riverside apartment, pretending everything was fine. Samantha's jaw dropped. Her polished fingernails tightened around the stem of her wineglass until I thought it might shatter. For the first time that evening, her perfect composure slipped. Daniel stumbled back into his chair, collapsing as though the weight of my words had crushed his spine. No, he whispered. No, you told me the bank had given you an extension. You said the landlord was being lenient. I lied. The words came out flat, merciless. I lied because I thought I was helping my son. I thought it would be temporary. I thought someday you'd be grateful. But here we are. And instead of gratitude, I'm being compared to your wife's mother. Someone who hasn't sacrificed 1 ounce of her comfort for you. Daniel's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. Samantha's face had drained of all color. She looked almost gray under the warm chandelier light. You're lying, she stammered suddenly, her voice thin, desperate. You must be lying. Daniel never said, he never told me. Of course he didn't, I snapped, cutting her off with a hand gesture so sharp she recoiled. Because your husband preferred to let you believe he was still the provider, still the man you married. Better to let me play the fool in secret than to admit the truth to you. I turned my gaze back to Daniel, and my heart twisted. My son, my only child, sat before me trembling, eyes wide, sweat beating at his temples. He looked nothing like the boy who once called me the strongest woman in the world. I sold your father's watch last winter, I said quietly. The one he wore every day for 30 years. I told you it was being repaired. It wasn't. I sold it to pay the November mortgage. In December, I pawned my engagement ring for the same reason. In January, I stopped buying the medication for my arthritis because I had to send that $22,100 to the bank before they sent you an eviction notice. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to continue. And last month? Last month I sold the only thing I had left of value, your father's wedding band. 35 years of love, melted down for cash so you could sit here tonight in your designer dress, Samantha, mocking me with your cruel little comparisons. The words echoed in the dining room. Even the kitchen clock seemed to pause, as though the house itself was holding its breath. Tears welled in Daniel's eyes. He buried his face in his hands, groaning. Oh God, Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something? I felt my jaw tighten. Because you came to me crying like a child. Because you said you couldn't even afford bread. Because I thought if I refused, you'd break. And what kind of mother refuses her child when he's on his knees? Samantha's composure crumbled completely now. She looked at Daniel with pure venom. You let her do this? She hissed. You let your mother sell her jewelry, skip her medication, just so we could live in that apartment? She broke off, her voice rising into a hysterical pitch. Do you have any idea how humiliated I look right now? Humiliated? I repeated, my voice sharp with bitter laughter. You talk about humiliation while you've been living off my sacrifices like parasites. Eating at restaurants, buying $400 shoes, posting photos of champagne dinners. All while I was heating up cans of soup in a kitchen where the roof leaks when it rains. I leaned forward, planting both hands firmly on the table, locking eyes with Samantha. You want to know what humiliation feels like? Humiliation is working 60-hour weeks as a seamstress, so your son can have an education, and then sitting across from his wife as she tells you you're not even half the... woman her mother is, Daniel tried to speak, but his voice broke. Mom, I never wanted— Don't, I cut him off. Don't insult me with more lies. 8 months, Daniel. 8 months of me carrying you in silence. And tonight, instead of a thank you, I'm repaid with contempt. My voice dropped low, trembling not from weakness, but from rage. Well, tonight the silence ends. I won't give another dollar. If Samantha's mother is such a paragon, let her prove it. Let her pay your mortgage. Let her carry you the way I have. Samantha sat rigid, her hands clutching the edge of the table, her painted nails digging grooves into the wood. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked as though she'd been slapped, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something stirring in me. Not sorrow, not fear, but strength. A strength I thought I'd lost. The weight of the secret was gone. The truth was out, and it had shaken this family to its core. Daniel's voice cracked as he tried to form words. Mom, please, you didn't have to do all that. I never asked you to, I snapped, my voice louder than I intended, rising like thunder in that small dining room. Didn't have to? Daniel, you stood on my doorstep sobbing like a lost boy. You told me you couldn't pay for bread, that Samantha cried every night from shame. You begged me, and I, fool that I am, believed you. My hands shook as I pressed them against the table, the veins in my arms standing out. The tears burned behind my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were fire. For 8 months, I continued, my voice trembling but unyielding, I ate rice and eggs for dinner while you two toasted champagne. I walked in broken shoes with holes in the soles, while Samantha flaunted handbags that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Do you know what I did last week, Daniel? He shook his head slowly, his lips quivering. I sold your father's wedding ring, I spat. The only piece of him I had left. The ring I swore I'd never part with, not even in death. And I traded it for cash, so you could sleep in your precious riverside apartment. So your wife could walk into restaurants smiling. So she could sit here tonight and call me less than half the woman her mother is. Samantha gasped audibly, one manicured hand flying to her mouth. That's insane. You shouldn't have— I rounded on her with a fury that startled even me. Don't you dare tell me what I should or shouldn't have done. You didn't know because your husband lied to you, and you didn't care enough to ask. You were too busy sneering at my curtains, mocking my meals, laughing at my life, all while I was paying for yours. The air felt electric, heavy. Samantha's face was red now, her composure in shreds. This is humiliating, she hissed. Do you know how this makes me look? To find out that my husband's mother, an old woman, was paying our bills behind my back? Humiliating? I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and jagged. You think you know humiliation? Try sitting alone in the pharmacy aisle, deciding between your blood pressure medication and your son's mortgage. Try telling the landlord you'll wire money tomorrow, even though it means pawning the last piece of jewelry you own. Try scraping coins off the bottom of your purse to buy eggs, while your daughter-in-law struts into your house wearing a $400 pair of shoes. That is humiliation, Samantha. That is sacrifice. Daniel slammed his fist on the table, the crystal glasses rattling violently. Enough, both of you. His eyes darted between us, wild and frantic. His face was flushed, his chest heaving. I never wanted it to get this far. I thought I'd find work. I thought I'd fix it before anyone found out. You thought wrong, I cut him off sharply. My voice dropped low, quiet but lethal. You thought you could gamble with my life, with my health, with my dignity. And when you ran out of excuses, you let Samantha rip me apart in my own home. He sank back, covering his face with his hands. I'm sorry, he whispered, over and over, as if the word could glue back the shattered pieces of my heart. Samantha wasn't finished. Her fear had transformed into rage, and rage into venom. This is your fault, Daniel? She screeched, pointing a trembling finger at him. You lied to me. You let me believe we were fine while your mother was bankrolling us like some pathetic charity case. Do you realize what people will say if they find out? Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes blazing. People? You're worried about people? My mother sold Dad's wedding ring, Sam. She starved herself to keep us afloat, and all you care about is appearances? For a moment, silence reigned. Only the sound of Daniel's ragged breathing filled the room. Samantha's lips trembled, her arrogance finally faltering. But she quickly straightened, crossing her arms in defiance. Well, Maybe if your mother had done more with her life, she wouldn't have to cling to her pity stories. My mother, stop! My voice cracked like a whip. I slammed my palm down so hard the silverware jumped. If I hear one more word about your mother, Samantha, I swear, the words died on my tongue. But the fury in my eyes finished the sentence for me. Samantha shrank back, her face paling again. Daniel's voice broke the silence, soft but piercing. Mom, I don't deserve you. I've failed you. But please, don't give up on me. I closed my eyes, my chest aching, my throat raw. The truth was out now. The years of quiet sacrifice, the months of hidden suffering, the humiliation, all laid bare on that dining table, surrounded by crystal glasses and a half-eaten chocolate pudding. And though my heart was breaking, I also felt something else stirring, a power I hadn't touched in years. This was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming my worth. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands, his shoulders hunched as if he carried the weight of the world. His voice, when it came, was broken. Mom, there's something else. I froze, my palms pressed flat against the table. The anger inside me stilled into something sharper, colder. What else, Daniel? He lifted his head slowly, shame burning in his eyes. It's not just this job. I've been fired 3 times in the past 2 years. The words dropped like a stone in water, rippling through the air until the silence was unbearable. My heart lurched. 3 times? My voice rose, trembling with disbelief. 3 times, Daniel? And you never told me? He nodded miserably, tears shining. I kept making excuses. Downsizing, bad bosses, bad luck. But the truth is, I never took responsibility. I let things slide. I kept thinking I'd find something better. And when I failed again, I ran back to you, expecting you'd always rescue me. Samantha gasped, her chair screeching as she pushed back. Her perfectly made-up face twisted in fury. What? You've been fired 3 times and you never told me? You let me prance around town, spending money we didn't have, while your mother, your 70-year-old mother, was paying for our apartment. Daniel flinched, his voice cracking. I didn't want you to leave me, Samantha. I thought if you knew the truth, you thought right. She spat, her voice shrill, hysterical. Do you know how ridiculous I look now? How pathetic. My friends think we're climbing the ladder, and all this time we've been leeches, living off your mother's pity. I stared at her, my fury simmering into something darker. Leeches, I repeated softly. At least you're self-aware. Her head whipped toward me, eyes blazing. Don't you dare, Margaret. Don't you dare judge me. You should have cut him off years ago. You made him weak by coddling him, by bailing him out every time he failed. This, she gestured wildly at Daniel, this useless, spineless man is your creation, not mine. Daniel's face went white. His lips trembled. Samantha! But she barreled on, venom dripping with every syllable. You think I married you for love? I married you because I thought you had potential. Because I thought your mother's house and her little savings would give us a head start. But look at you now, jobless, pathetic, hiding behind your mother's skirts at 35. Daniel shot to his feet, knocking his chair backward. His fists clenched at his sides, his chest heaving with rage and humiliation. Enough, Samantha! He shouted, his voice echoing through the house. Enough! Don't you dare talk to me like that in front of my mother. But she only laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that sliced through the air. In front of your mother? Ha! She's the only reason you're not on the street. And you, she jabbed a finger at me, you sit there acting like some martyr, but you're not noble. You're pathetic. You've been paying our bills in secret because you crave control. You want to keep Daniel tied to you forever, don't you? Because without you, he's nothing. Her words hit like acid, but this time, they didn't burn me. They burned her. I straightened in my chair, my spine rigid. My voice was low, steady, and sharper than a knife. You're right about one thing, Samantha. Without me, Daniel would have nothing. But I never wanted him to be nothing. I gave him every chance, every sacrifice, so he could stand tall. And what did you give him? Criticism. Contempt. And now, when the truth finally catches up, you spit venom instead of standing by your husband. Daniel's face twisted in anguish, torn between shame and fury. Stop, he begged, his voice breaking. Both of you stop! But neither of us did. Samantha slammed her palms on the table, her expensive bracelets clattering. I won't stay married to a failure. Not when the whole city will know we've been living off your mother's charity. Do you know what this will do to my reputation? To my image? I laughed then, cold, hollow, merciless. Reputation, image? Is that all you care about? You've never loved my son. You loved the lifestyle, the facade, the idea of wealth. And now that the mask has slipped, you can't stand the sight of what's underneath. Samantha's face contorted with rage, but I didn't stop. My voice rose, strong and unshaken. Let me tell you something, Samantha. I may be 70 years old. I may have arthritis and gray hair, but I am not weak. I have carried this family on my back. I have sacrificed everything, my health, my dreams, my savings, so that my son could live. And what have you sacrificed? A manicure? A spa weekend? A pair of designer shoes? The room fell silent. Daniel lowered his head, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. Samantha's chest heaved, her eyes darting between us, as if calculating her next move. For the first time, I felt the balance tilt entirely in my favor. The lies were out, the secrets exposed, their fragile facade shattered, and though my heart ached, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The woman who had been dismissed as not half the woman was the only one at that table who had ever truly given everything. My knees trembled as I sank slowly into my chair. For a moment, I thought my heart might give out right there in the middle of the dining room. My chest tightened with a sharp, suffocating pain. My hands, frail and veined, trembled against the edge of the table. For decades, I had borne every burden in silence, believing my strength was infinite, believing a mother's duty had no limits. But that night, the weight felt crushing. Daniel lunged forward, his face pale with panic. "Mom, are you all right?" He reached for my hands, gripping them desperately. "Please sit, breathe. Don't scare me like this." I pulled my hands away, my voice raw. "I've already sacrificed everything for you, Daniel. What more do you want? My last breath?" Tears welled in his eyes. "No, Mom, I don't want that. I don't know how to fix this." His voice cracked like a boy's, not a man's. "Please, don't give up on me. I can change. I swear I can change." I stared at him, my vision blurred by tears. Change? After all these years, after all these lies, now you want to change? My words trembled, but my tone was razor sharp. "Tell me, Daniel, how many times have you promised me that before? How many times have I believed you, only to watch you fall deeper into the same pit?" His shoulders shook, his chest heaving as sobs escaped his lips. He buried his face in his hands like a broken child. Samantha scoffed, the sound cruel in the tense silence. "This is pathetic," she muttered, her voice rising. "Look at you, Daniel, crying like a boy in front of your mother. And you expect me to stay married to this? To a man who can't even hold a job, who lets his mother bankroll his life, who sits there sobbing because he's been caught." Daniel's head snapped up, his face wet with tears. "Don't talk to me like that," he shouted, his voice hoarse. "You don't understand what I've been going through. What you've been going through?" Samantha's voice grew shrill, hysterical. She stood abruptly, knocking her chair backward. "Do you have any idea what I've been going through? Walking into dinners with friends, smiling as if everything was perfect, while in reality I was living in an apartment paid for by your 70-year-old mother?" Her mascara streaked down her cheeks as her composure shattered completely. "I am done being humiliated like this. Do you hear me, Daniel? Done!" Daniel staggered to his feet, his hands outstretched toward her. "Please, Samantha, don't leave. We can fix this. I'll find another job. You'll what?" She spat, her voice shaking with fury. "You'll promise again? Lie again? Drag me down with you again? I can't do this anymore, Daniel. I will not be chained to a man who can't even stand on his own 2 feet." Her chest heaved as she grabbed her purse from the floor. "If you think I'm going to waste the best years of my life waiting for you to become a real man, you're delusional." Daniel's voice cracked as he reached for her arm. "Samantha, please. I love you." She yanked her arm away with such force that he stumbled backward. "Love? Love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't put food on the table. Love doesn't buy me the life I deserve. Your mother can keep coddling you if she wants, but I won't." Her eyes, red and swollen with tears, turned on me like daggers. "And you, Margaret, you created this mess. You turned him into this weak, pitiful man by never letting him fail. You made him dependent. You wanted to be his savior, his saint. Well, congratulations. Now you can keep him. I'm done. She stormed toward the door, her heels clicking violently against the hardwood floor. Daniel collapsed to his knees in the middle of the dining room, his hands clutching his head. His sobs tore through the house, raw and broken. Please, Samantha. Don't leave me, please! But she didn't look back. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the house like a gunshot. For a long moment, there was only silence, broken only by the sound of my son's desperate sobs. I sat frozen, my body heavy, my soul weary. The woman who had insulted me was gone, but the damage she left behind was carved deep into both of us. I looked at Daniel, my only child, reduced to a man on his knees, begging for scraps of love from a woman who had just spit venom into both our faces. And in that moment, I felt something inside me crumble, not just anger, not just disappointment, but the heartbreaking realization that I had lost control years ago, that all my sacrifices had not built him up, but had chained him down. The boy I once carried in my arms had become a man unable to stand without leaning on me. And now, as he knelt before me, begging and broken, I no longer knew if I had the strength to lift him again. Daniel remained on his knees, his sobs shaking his entire frame. His fingers clawed at his hair, as if he wanted to tear away the shame that had wrapped itself around him. Please, Mom, he whispered hoarsely. Don't give up on me. I need you. I stared at him, my chest heavy with grief and fury all at once. For decades, I had been his savior, his safety net, his last resort. And now, as I watched him crumpled on the floor, I realized he didn't just need me. He was addicted to me. Addicted to my rescue, to my sacrifices, to my endless forgiveness. I clenched my fists to stop them from trembling. Daniel, you don't need me. You need to face what you've become. He lifted his tear-streaked face to mine, and there was something in his eyes, something desperate, something terrified. Then I'll tell you everything, he choked out. I can't hide anymore. A chill slid down my spine. Everything? His lips quivered, but the words spilled out anyway. I didn't just lose jobs because of bad luck. I was fired for drinking. His voice cracked. I've been struggling with alcohol for years, Mom. That's why I was late to shifts. That's why I couldn't keep steady work. I told myself it was stress, that I deserved a drink after every failure. But it became more than that. It controlled me. My heart thudded, heavy as lead. Daniel pressed his palms against the floor, his voice breaking. You remember when I came to you last winter, saying the landlord was threatening eviction? I told you I needed money for rent. But it wasn't all for rent. Some of it went to cover debts, money I owed from drinking, from stupid choices. I lied to you, Mom. I lied because I knew you'd help me no matter what. I've been drowning, and I dragged you down with me. The room spun. My breath caught, sharp and ragged. The betrayal was deeper than I'd ever imagined. Worse than the job losses. Worse than the lies about the mortgage. You let me sell your father's ring. For that? My voice cracked like shattered glass. You let me pawn away my last memories of him while you bought liquor? Daniel collapsed forward, his forehead pressing to the hardwood floor. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I hate myself for it. I thought I could quit. I thought I could control it. But I couldn't. And every time I failed, I came running to you. Because I knew you'd catch me. For a long, agonizing moment, I could only stare at him, the man who was once my little boy, now broken, weak, and drowning in his own shame. My tears finally spilled, hot and unstoppable, streaming down my cheeks. But they weren't only tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage. I stood, my chair scraping back violently against the floor. My legs trembled, but my spine was straight as a steel rod. Enough, I said, my voice low, steady, terrifying even to my own ears. Daniel looked up at me, his face blotched and wet. Mom, stop calling me, I cut him off sharply. My voice rose with every word, gaining strength I hadn't felt in years. For 70 years I have carried everyone. My parents, your father until the day cancer took him. You every single day since you were born. And what has it left me with? Empty hands, an empty heart, and a son who believes love means sacrifice without limits. Daniel's lips trembled. But you're my mother. That's what mothers do. No, I snapped, slamming my palm on the table so hard the crystal rattled. That's what I did. And I was wrong. Loving you didn't mean protecting you from consequences. It didn't mean destroying myself so you could stumble through life without ever learning to stand. I thought I was saving you, but all I did was cripple you. His body shook as if every word was a lash across his skin. I took a deep, ragged breath, the storm inside me finally finding its release. No more, Daniel. No more lies. No more begging. No more sacrifices. Tonight, it ends. Tonight, I am done being your lifeline. The silence was suffocating. Daniel stared at me, wide-eyed, as though I had just ripped away the ground beneath him. His lips parted, but no words came out. I will not pay another mortgage, I continued, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. I will not sell another memory, another treasure, another piece of myself to save you from yourself. If you want a future, you'll have to build it with your own two hands. Because I am finished carrying you! Daniel scrambled forward, his hands clutching at the hem of my dress like a child. Mom, please, don't leave me. Don't turn your back on me. Without you, I can't. I stepped back, pulling free of his grip. My tears blurred my vision, but my voice was clear, unwavering. You can. And you must. Because if you don't, Daniel, you'll destroy us both. And I refuse to let you destroy me any longer. The words hung heavy, final, filling every corner of the dining room. For the first time in decades, I wasn't Margaret the caretaker. Margaret the provider, Margaret the silent backbone. I was Margaret, the woman who had finally drawn the line, and nothing would ever be the same again. Daniel remained on the floor, his sobs echoing against the wooden walls of my old townhouse. His chest heaved violently, his hands clawing at the rug as though he could dig himself into the earth and disappear. I can't do this without you, Mom, he whispered hoarsely, rocking back and forth. I'll fall apart. I'll drink again. I'll lose everything. I stood there, silent, watching the boy I had raised unravel before me. My heart ached. My arms longed to reach for him, as they had when he was small. But I didn't move. For the first time in my life, I forced myself to resist the instinct to rescue. Before I could speak, the front door creaked open. Samantha! She stepped back into the dining room. Her eyes red and puffy, mascara streaks staining her face. Her posture was stiff, her chin high, but her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. I forgot my phone, she muttered, avoiding my gaze. Her eyes flicked to Daniel, collapsed on the floor, then back to me. Has he told you? Daniel lifted his head, his voice raw. I told her everything. About the jobs, about the drinking. Samantha let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Good. Finally. Maybe now she'll stop worshiping you like some tragic hero. She turned her gaze on me, her expression hardening. But you know what, Margaret? You're not innocent in this. You created this mess by never cutting him off. You fed his weakness. Her words sliced, but they no longer had the same power. Not after everything I had endured tonight. You're right, I said softly, surprising even myself. I enabled him. I carried him for too long. But that ends tonight. Samantha's eyes narrowed. She crossed her arms, shifting her weight onto one heel. So what happens now? You throw him to the wolves? Let him crash and burn? Daniel groaned, his head falling back into his hands. Please don't talk like I'm not even here. But Samantha ignored him. Her tone turned calculating, almost cold. Look, Margaret, we both know Daniel won't survive without help. He's weak. He always has been. If you want him alive, you'll have to keep paying, keep bailing him out. She paused, her lips curving into a cruel smile. But maybe that's what you want. Maybe you like being needed. Her words, designed to sting, instead lit something different inside me, a spark of clarity. For the first time, I saw her not as a rival, not even as a cruel daughter-in-law, but as a mirror. A mirror of every sacrifice that had turned into chains. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. My voice was calm, resolute. I don't want to be needed like that. I want to be respected. I want to be free. Samantha's smirk faltered. Free? Yes, I whispered, more to myself than to her. Free from lies, free from carrying burdens that aren't mine. Free to live whatever years I have left for myself. Daniel looked up at me then, his eyes swollen, his face streaked with tears. Mom, what does that mean? Are you leaving me? The question pierced my heart, but I stood my ground. No, Daniel, I'm not leaving you. I'm letting you stand. For the first time in your life, you will face your own choices. You will learn to carry yourself. Because if I keep carrying you, you'll never learn and you'll never survive. Samantha rolled her eyes, snatching her phone from the counter. Good luck with that, she muttered. He'll fall apart in a week, and don't come running to me when he does. Her heels clicked against the floor as she stormed out again, the door slamming behind her like a final punctuation mark. Daniel collapsed back against the leg of the dining table, his sobs quieter now, almost hollow. She's gone, he whispered. I've lost everything. I looked at him, my son, broken and fragile, and for the first time, I didn't feel crushed by his weakness. I felt lighter, because I finally understood that losing everything wasn't always the end. Sometimes it was the only way to start over. The tears slid down my cheeks, but they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of release. For the first time in decades, I allowed myself to imagine a life beyond sacrifice. A life where I wasn't defined only as Daniel's mother, but as Margaret, a woman who had her own dreams, her own worth, her own right to happiness. And that tiny flicker of hope glowed in the ashes of everything that had just burned to the ground. The house was silent after Samantha's departure. Daniel had cried himself into exhaustion, slumped against the dining table like a defeated soldier. I moved quietly through the room, blowing out the candles I had lit hours earlier, their wax melted into uneven pools. The once perfectly set table now looked like a battlefield, spilled water, overturned chairs, a dessert untouched. For a moment, I thought of how symbolic it was. A night I had prepared with love and care had ended in wreckage. I sank into my armchair by the window, my body aching, my heart hollow. My hands trembled as I reached for the old family photo that sat on the side table. Daniel at 5 years old, grinning with ice cream smeared across his face. How had that innocent boy grown into the broken man crying in my dining room tonight? I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. For decades, my life had been defined by sacrifice, always giving, always carrying, always holding others together while no one held me. Now, for the first time, I felt the emptiness of that role. The silence was broken by the faint buzz of my phone on the side table. I almost ignored it, too weary to speak to anyone. But when I glanced at the screen, my breath caught Michael Jenkins. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. Michael, the boy I had once planned to marry before life had taken us down different paths. The man who had left for Seattle with dreams too big for a small-town girl like me. I hadn't heard his name in over 40 years. My hand shook as I answered. Hello? A deep, warm voice filled the line. Margaret, it's been a long time. The sound of his voice swept me back to another lifetime. College days filled with laughter, stolen kisses under the autumn trees, promises whispered in the dark. My throat tightened. Michael, I don't know what to say. Say you remember me, he chuckled softly. Because I never forgot you. My lips parted, but no words came. Tears blurred my vision as I listened. I found your number through an old friend, he continued. I wasn't sure if you'd even want to hear from me, but I had to try. After my wife passed 2 years ago, I started thinking about all the people who shaped my life. And you, Margaret, you were the one who got away. My chest tightened, not from sorrow this time, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I don't mean to intrude, Michael said gently. But I've been running a small architecture firm out here in Seattle. My kids are grown now, and lately, I've wondered what it would be like to reconnect. Maybe even to give us the chance we never had. I sat frozen, my mind reeling. Just hours ago, I had been humiliated, broken, stripped bare by my own son and his wife. And now, out of nowhere, life was handing me a possibility I thought had long since passed me by. I managed a shaky laugh. Michael, I'm 70 years old. I'm not the girl you knew, his voice softened. And I'm 72. None of us are who we were. But Margaret, that's the point. We've lived, we've learned, we've hurt, and maybe now we can finally choose happiness. For the first time that night, I felt something shift inside me. A release, as though the heavy chains I had carried for decades loosened just enough to let me breathe. We talked for nearly an hour, reminiscing about old days, catching up on the years we had lost. He told me about his children, about the wife he had loved and lost, about the business he had built. And then he said something that pierced straight into my soul. "Margaret," he whispered, "I remember how you once dreamed of seeing the Pacific Ocean. You told me you wanted to stand on the shore and watch the waves stretch to infinity. That dream doesn't have to die. Come visit me. Let me show you the ocean. Let me remind you what it feels like to be alive." I covered my mouth, my tears spilling freely now. No one had asked me about my dreams in decades. No one had spoken to me as if I were more than just a mother, more than just a caretaker. As I ended the call, my heart still pounding, I realized something profound. Maybe Samantha was right. Maybe I'd enabled Daniel too long, but that didn't mean my life was over. For the first time in years, I saw a sliver of a future that wasn't defined by sacrifice and sorrow. A future where I could be Margaret again, not just Daniel's mother, not just Charles's widow, but a woman with dreams still worth chasing. And for the first time in decades, I whispered the words I had long forgotten. Maybe it's not too late. The next morning, the house was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting golden lines across the worn wooden floor. I had barely slept, yet I felt strangely awake, as though something inside me had shifted during the night. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, letting the warmth of the mug settle into my hands. For years, mornings had felt heavy, like the start of another day in chains. But now, the simple act of sipping coffee felt like a small declaration of freedom. Daniel shuffled into the room, his face pale, his eyes bloodshot from crying. He looked older than his 35 years, beaten down, hollowed out. For a long moment, he stood silently in the doorway, watching me. "You look different," he said finally, his voice hoarse. I set my mug down, meeting his gaze steadily. "That's because I am Daniel." He frowned, confusion flickering across his face. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "Last night I realized something. My life doesn't have to end in sacrifice. I've spent 70 years carrying everyone else, but now it's time to carry myself." Daniel's brow furrowed. "But Mom, you can't just walk away." "I need you." The old me would have melted at those words. But not this time. I shook my head firmly. "No, Daniel. What you need is to face yourself. For too long, I let you believe that love meant shielding you from pain. But love also means letting someone grow, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts." He looked down at the floor, his hands tightening into fists. "I don't know if I can." "Then you'll learn," I said softly. "Because I won't be here to save you anymore." The words hung heavy in the air. Daniel swallowed hard, his jaw trembling. "So what now? You just live your life, and I'm supposed to figure mine out alone?" "Yes," I replied. "That's what being an adult means. And you should have learned it long ago." He flinched, but I pressed on. "Daniel, do you realize what's happening here? I'm 70 years old, 70. By all accounts, I should be slowing down. But instead, I feel alive for the first time in decades. I'm ready to chase dreams I thought were dead. And you're 35 in the prime of your life, yet you've spent it running from responsibility, waiting for me to catch you every time you fell." Daniel's face crumpled. "You're saying I've wasted my life." I leaned forward, my voice steady but firm. "I'm saying it's not too late to change, but only if you stop expecting me to be your crutch. Look at me, Daniel. If I can choose to live differently at 70, you can choose to live differently at 35. The contrast between us hung in the air like a mirror he couldn't escape. Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. His eyes filled with tears again, but this time I saw something different. Shame, yes, but also recognition. The truth had pierced him. "You know," I continued, my voice softening, "last night I spoke with Michael Jenkins. He reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that I once had dreams too. To travel, to see the ocean, to live for myself, not just for everyone else. And I'm going to chase those dreams, Daniel. I don't care how old I am. It's not too late." His head jerked up, surprise flashing across his face. "Michael? From college?" "Yes," I allowed a small smile. "He reminded me that my life isn't over just because I'm old. That there's still time to love, to laugh, to live fully." Daniel swallowed, his voice breaking. "And what about me? What happens to me when you go chasing your dreams?" I reached across the table, placing my hand gently over his trembling one. What happens to you depends on you, not me. Not Samantha. You. It's time you write your own story, Daniel. His tears spilled, dripping onto the table. He whispered, I'm scared. So am I admitted. But fear is not an excuse to stay broken. It's a reason to move forward. For a long, fragile moment, we sat there, mother and son, bound by blood but standing at a crossroads. One stepping into hope after decades of sacrifice, the other staring at the wreckage of wasted years. Forced at last to confront himself, and in that moment, the contrast was undeniable. The 70-year-old mother daring to begin again, and the 35-year-old son finally realizing he had never truly begun at all. That evening, after Daniel had gone to his room, the house fell into a deep silence. I sat alone in my armchair, staring out the window as the city lights flickered against the night sky. My body ached with exhaustion, but my soul, my soul felt lighter than it had in years. For decades, I had been defined by one role, the mother who never stopped giving. I had poured myself out until there was nothing left, believing that love meant sacrifice without end. But tonight, I discovered a different truth. I turned toward the camera in my mind's eye, the way I imagined speaking not just to my son, but to anyone who might hear this story. My voice, though raspy with age, carried a firmness I hadn't heard in myself before. Let me tell you something, I began softly. Being a mother is the greatest gift of my life. But somewhere along the way, I confused love with surrender. I gave and gave until I disappeared, and that was my mistake. I took a deep breath, pressing my palm flat against my chest. Love is not slavery. Love is not silence. Love is not selling the last piece of yourself so that others can avoid their own responsibilities. Real love, healthy love, requires respect. It requires boundaries. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is to stop rescuing the ones you love, so they finally learn to stand on their own. Tears welled in my eyes, but this time, they weren't born of sorrow. They were tears of release, of clarity. I'm 70 years old, I continued, and for the first time in decades, I feel alive, because I've learned that it's never too late. Never too late to chase the dreams you buried, never too late to find joy, never too late to start over. I thought of Michael, his voice steady on the phone, his promise of the ocean waves waiting for me in Seattle. And I smiled. For me, hope came in the form of a phone call, an old love reminding me that I am still a woman, not just a mother. But hope can come in many forms. A new opportunity, a second chance, a whisper in your own heart that says, this is not the end. There is more for you. The room seemed to grow warmer, filled with a quiet strength that steadied my spirit. So, to anyone listening, whether you're 20 or 70, I want you to remember this. Your worth is not measured by how much you sacrifice. Your value is not defined by how much pain you can endure for others. You are allowed to dream. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to live for yourself. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, as if setting down a burden I had carried all my life. My son's journey is not over. He has choices to make, demons to face, and I pray he finds his way, but his life is his own. For the first time, I understand that mine is too. The night outside deepened, the stars shimmering faintly above the city. For years, I had feared loneliness more than anything, but now, as I sat there, I realized solitude did not have to be emptiness. It could be freedom. It could be peace. I whispered one last thought, as if speaking directly to every heart listening. If life gives you a second chance, no matter your age, no matter your past, have the courage to take it. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start living now, because it is never too late to begin again. And with that, I let the silence wrap around me. Not heavy this time, but tender. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow.